Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about the House Speaker race and some exclusive information that we received last night on Twitter Spaces with Matt Gaetz. This was the second time Matt Gaetz has come onto a Twitter Space with us and discussed what exactly is going on in the House Speaker race, what he is thinking. So this happened last night on January 4th. So right now, everything in the House is up in the air. Kevin McCarthy doesn't have the votes. We just went into the 8th round of voting. Things might be a little different once this video is uploaded, but this time now, while I'm uploading or while I'm recording, this is what's happened. So today I wanted to go over what Matt Gaetz said last night and share with you, if you were not in the space, what was said. At one point, there was about 4,000 listeners. So in the grand scheme of things, not that many people heard the messages Matt Gaetz had. He went into much more depth than he has in any television interview you've seen of him, anything you've seen elsewhere. He really gave us a lot of information, as much as he could, into what is happening. So stick along with me in this video to hear what Matt Gaetz had to say. So thankfully, our friend Bricksuit had recorded these parts of the space, because the space was not recorded. This was cleared by Matt and his team. So everything I'm showing you has been okayed for you guys to hear. But let's just get into it. I want to, this might be a long video, so let's get into the recordings now.
Welcome to the stage, Matt Gaetz.
Well, welcome, Congressman. Thank you for joining us 2 nights in a row.
So, we listened live to your interview on Fox News, and so you said that there might be more defections tomorrow. What are you seeing on the right now that's happening in Congress?
What do I see that is happening in Congress? The thing to me that is so wild about this is how rapidly every corner of the national media resorted to this is chaos. The world might end. Congress has gone 2 days without a speaker. There are entire days, like you say, where, like I said on Fox, where all we do is rename a post office. There are entire days where all we vote on are the rules for the next vote. So the notion that for a decision so somber and serious, we might take a little time and see how people operate under pressure, doesn't strike me as some terribly crazy thing. And the Republican Party right now is in need of change, and Washington is in need of change. And McCarthy kind of embodies a lot of the things that are the worst features of Washington and the worst features of the Republican Party. And so, I'm in the Lauren Boebert camp, where if we can't wake this guy up every day and put him in a straitjacket.
Sorry to interrupt, but basically what he just said is he's in Lauren Boebert's camp. So I wonder, a lot of people think right now that Matt Gaetz is, running the show. Maybe he just made it clear that it's actually Lauren Boebert, but I don't know.
Right after the prayer and the pledge, where basically he's a disembodied portrait. We can't trust him around actual power, because we know what he does with it. He sells it to the lobbyists and the special interests for money that he then redistributes. And it's a crazy game that you would almost not ever want to actually win.
So in the next recording, someone asked, does Matt think that the problem is just no one else wants to be speaker? So let's hear what Matt has to say.
Matt, do you think the problem is that nobody wants to be speaker?
No, man, there is blood in the water. And I had people from 3 different camps reach out to me and be like, oh, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? And they're all worried. Here's the problem, right? The most frequent question I get asked is, what's the plan? How does it end? Who's next? Who's the who do we ultimately end up with? We've seen you guys go from Biggs to Jordan to Donalds. But at the end of the day, it is hyper sequential, right? The first thing you have to show the McCarthy people is that even though there are more of them, that we're willing to go longer and forever. to stop this guy from getting the gavel. And we have to break their will. And my bet is that the crew I'm rolling with, which probably isn't all 20 that have voted against McCarthy. I didn't think we had 20 votes against McCarthy.
He's giving information that, not everyone has the same exact, desires, outcomes that they want, but generally they're working together for a similar goal while they have other, aspects that they're trying to work out, which is actually a question I asked him a little bit later on that he expanded more into, but let's continue with this recording.
I thought we had about maybe a dozen. And I got to figure out who are the folks that are ready to say that in the greatest country in the world, in a time of peril, in a world in which the only Republican node of power is the House of Representatives, do we really want to trust it to this guy under any terms? And maybe there are terms that basically reduce Kevin McCarthy to a portrait on a wall and a side note in history. But we haven't found them yet.
So you said that there's multiple camps forming. So can you just clarify? You don't have to say their names if it's kind of still private, but can you just talk about how things are starting to fracture in the McCarthy camp?
Yeah, what are the exact camps, I guess?
Well, I mean, obviously the facial camps you see are the people voting for Kevin and the people that are not. And among the people that are voting for Kevin, there are some true believers. There are some who say that the reason they cannot allow Kevin to be disposed is because they are from districts that require extensive resources for re-election. And if you take a guy who as much as I am not a McCarthy fan, the guy absolutely has been the LeBron James of special interest fundraising. And so if you've got somebody who is fundraising like he is, there are just some folks who say, you know what, that is an end unto itself. And if you basically send the message that you can go out there and fundraise for 4 years and then get knifed, that nobody will want to do that anymore. So there are people who hold that perspective in the pro-Kevin camp. And then there are people that are like, you know what, I'm pro-Kevin until y'all prove me he isn't going to win. And the moment I kind of think he isn't going to win, I'm jumping. And you kind of saw Victoria Spartz, right, as the leading indicator of that wave, someone who had voted for McCarthy multiple times. But once she saw the resolve in opposition, then, she was unwilling to lend him her support today, which was a big, momentum boost for us. So then if you go to the anti, let me finish it, Chuck. So if you go to the anti-McCarthy camp, I think you get kind of two groups. One group that say, so long as we can put any speaker in a straitjacket, we'll take him. And we're willing to withhold our support for McCarthy because he hasn't yet agreed to end.
You have to, put a pin in that. In a straitjacket. They want to, make sure that someone doesn't have as much power as speakership usually does lend to. So that's an important point he made.
Enter the straitjacket. And then there are others who say, well, doesn't really matter what he's willing to offer or pledge. At the end of the day, we got to send somebody in to negotiate with Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden. And if we send this guy under any terms, we're just toast.
So in the next clip, Gaetz is going to go a little bit more into what he meant about the straitjacket, trying to constrain power. So let's give that a listen.
So Matt, these terms you're talking about, where you want to basically, handcuff McCarthy or whatever. I mean, do you want that for any speaker that comes up or just McCarthy?
I think that it's the baseline, right? So we had an interesting call with the Republicans recently, and it starts with
So when he's saying it's the baseline, he's also indicating that it's not just a never McCarthy and that we will vote for anyone. It's, or at least in his case, he's saying, I will vote for someone else, but they also, this is a baseline. They also need to be constrained in their power, and we need to gain certain elements that we don't have right now. And we don't like McCarthy, but also whoever's next, we want to constrain their power as well.
We have already fundamentally changed the rules of the House because things like germanity requirements for amendments, single subject requirements for legislation, the fact that all amendments to reduce spending must be made in order. Like, they're kind of wonky, but they're really important. Like, you couldn't pass the Omni under the rules that we are currently kind of at with a majority of the conference. So, like, we have this call, and a bunch of folks get on and say, "Oh, these are the greatest rules that have ever existed." Now, granted, that nobody thought about giving us these rules when we were thinking we were going to have a 30-seat majority. We only had them because we had a gun to McCarthy's, kind of political future. And when we got them, everyone celebrated them. And then subsequently, I was like, well, hell, if these are such good rules, they should be good rules no matter who the speaker is. And then there was like an avalanche of like, we don't like the rules. We only accepted these to get McCarthy as speaker. And so it'll be interesting to see whether they survive. But it's been a pretty therapeutic process for the members to say, oh, man, like, this is the power you could have. Like, all 222 of you could go to the floor and say, like, why the fuck is the Farm Bill embedded with an authorization for war in Yemen? And why is the National Defense Authorization Act a amendment to a water infrastructure bill? And that stuff happens all the time in Washington, and it's actually how most of the bad ideas become law. So, like, when you hear your Republicans talking about the rules, it's easy for your eyes to glaze over and for you to think that it's just kind of the wonky zero-sum power plays of Washington. But in reality, these are the decisions that affect people's lives, and it is the construct and the paradigm that allows us to be able to make individual determinations on legislation. So a lot of that McCarthy's already given. But if all you have is the rules can always be waived. And we have seen time and again really good rule structures abandoned by leadership that just wants to force you into an up or down vote, to cover the next 9 months on everything, like you saw in the lame duck session. And so that's why it's not just rules. It's like, we got to have people on the rules committee so that they're not waived. We have to have people on the appropriations committee so that we don't continue to spend our country into debt. And like on the specific stuff on the culture war, we're not just going to trust that Kevin McCarthy, of all people, is going to have the right committee chairs and subcommittee chairs. We want to know that shit in advance. And I don't think that is too much to ask for a guy who promised us a 30, 40, 50 seat majority and vastly underperformed expectations.
So in that clip, we got a lot of information, but we also got Gaetz dropping the F-bomb saying, yo, which is pretty funny. But, in my opinion, I think he's right. It is, what they're doing right now, whether or not you approve of it, if you are a fan of it, you also have to understand that for other people on the floor and other representatives, this is an eye-opener for them that they do have some sense of power that some of them forget that they have to, sign on to these omnibus bills, and they can just go back to their districts and say, yeah, well, I had to fund the military or else, everything's going to fall apart, even though there's a bunch of, the jab mandates for the military included in these bills. So it also, empowers people to say, hey, well, why does things have to be this way? They don't actually. We can have some power.
Begging for motions to please move to adjourn just so we can stop these votes, stop showing
this
the
is what
country
Kevin
that I don't have the votes and I told people I did. Well, he wanted us to all come meet him in the speaker's office. And I was like, man, you're a squatter there. I'm not going to the speaker's office. You want to come? Tom Emmer was elected whip. I'll go meet you in Tom Emmer's office. And so we had McCarthy have to come down to the whip's office because we will not meet with him in the speaker's office because he is not the speaker, and we will not be summoned to the speaker's office by someone who is not the speaker. I wrote the architect of the Capitol, who's kind of responsible for who occupies what space. And I was like, yo, What is the basis in law or rule or precedent for some cat who just lost 6 ballots to move into the speaker's office? Like, let me know. Inquiring minds are curious.
So what do you think is the significance of someone like Sparks voting present? Is that something you would encourage other members to do instead of just outright voting against McCarthy? Like, what do you think is the thinking and strategy there?
Oh, I am very impressed with my colleague, Victoria Sparks. She got to a point where she couldn't continue to vote for a person she didn't believe in. And Victoria is, if you don't know, like, she is like a big four, like a, very serious financial mind. Like the greatest moment for Victoria Sparks in Congress is one time when she's questioning Christopher Wray at the FBI, and he tries to mansplain to her what an audit is, and she dog walked Christopher Wray, and I gained so much respect for her. And by the way, she's been telling a lot of truth about Ukraine too, and some of the fraud that's been going on in that government that our American taxpayers are paying for. But Victoria reached the point where she couldn't vote for Kevin anymore, and so she switched to present, and that's huge because it changes the denominator of this like ratio and only makes every no vote more powerful. So she didn't want to like spit in McCarthy's face and vote no, but to go from a yes to a present is a supercharge of every no vote that exists.
Okay, so now this is going to be my question.
All right. Next up, I'm going to Marie. Go ahead.
Well, her being in Big Four definitely means she's used to torture, so I don't think she's going to leave, her position anytime soon.
Disavow.
I mean, it's the Big Four. It's awful. But so when it comes to like the 20 people so far that you have on your side, and then the +1, which is Victoria, is everyone currently on board with the message, or are you having some people who are having second thoughts? Maybe they're getting some committee assignments dangled in front of them. If you want to give any insight on that.
Yeah, I think that not all of the 20 like view the entire contour of this race the same way, but we are unified in wanting to change Washington, and we know Washington is broken, and I'm incredibly proud of every single one of them for their courage on that front. There are some of the 20 who think that the way to change Washington is to extract every drop of blood from Kevin McCarthy on budget, on like getting real fighters on committees, on resources for investigations, and then when he's fully debalmed, to just basically set him up at the speaker's rostrum and run the House while he sort of gazes at his portrait. There are others, and I would include myself in this latter camp currently, who say, man, the country's going to hell. This is the only thing we have, the House of Representatives, and we cannot put this dude in charge of it because he is owned by the lobbyists. He believes in nothing. He has no ideology. And if we vote for him, we probably believe in nothing too. So there is a difference. Like, I do not want to represent to the country that this is a homogenous group of 20 people who all think that the same prescription will cure the virus, right? What I would say is that we all have the same diagnosis, and we diagnose that Washington is broken, but we got different ideas on how to fix it.
Go ahead, Julia.
Thanks. Hey, Matt, thanks for coming into the space to talk with us. I just had 2 quick questions. The first one, what do you make of Dan Crenshaw saying that the GOP representatives who are holding out against McCarthy are acting like, quote, terrorists and children? And then the second one was, what do you see as the best possible outcome in this situation?
Best possible outcome is Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House, emerging as someone who can credibly get the McCarthy votes, having been, in the fight on behalf of McCarthy, and also able to get our votes because we know he is the most talented, most capable, most inspiring member that we have. And, I understand that Mr. Crenshaw has his perspective. I have mine. He doesn't represent any more folks than I do. I don't represent any more folks than he does. So, I am making substantive arguments about the failures of Washington, D.C. over decades to deliver for the American people. If you think this place is working good for you, vote for, be for the dude who's been in leadership for the last 14 years. And if you think we need to send a shockwave through this system, hang with me.
That's pretty funny. Hang with me. So it is pretty crazy if you're, looking at Fox News, if you're looking at that sort of media, the right-wing media, you are noticing a really intensifying level of rhetoric calling people terrorist for not voting for Kevin McCarthy. It's really crazy, especially given tomorrow is January 6th. Are we really going to be playing into that sort of rhetoric? I thought, Fox News people always sort of made fun of, not even made fun of, like admonish the left for inciting that type of language. But then they go around and use that same language, but about people on their own side. And right now, if you're looking at CNN or any of these things, like Jake Tapper was defending what these 20 representatives were doing, saying this is actually important in democracy. So it is kind of interesting to see this, difference between the right-wing media and the right-wing media talking heads versus like people like Jake Tapper, who would usually be the types to incite that sort of language.
Opportunity to negotiate with you. Give me just a couple hours. And we're like, look, we will hear the guy out. We will suspend for a couple hours. And people broke up into different productive working groups. And again, I told you, this group of 20 I have is not homogenous, right?
So Bricksuit said he missed the question. I actually remember the question. It was just sort of asking like what happened between the break out that happened yesterday on January 4th. If you've been following, that, they adjourned for a bit and then they came back and then they did a final adjourning, but he's explaining what happened during that time.
Of them care most about investigations. So they broke off with some of the leaders on investigations to talk about like really what that would look like, not from a talking point standpoint, but from a battle plan standpoint. We got some people who are budget hawks. They got, with the future, with Jason Smith and, got in a granular detail what would be the constraints we would put on the Senate when they try to spend us into oblivion. And then there were some of us who were worried about House structure, and we met with McCarthy and talked to him. So as all of those groups were kind of, disbanding and coming back to the floor, there were some folks that said, let's keep talking. There were other folks that said, let's vote. I'm on the side of taking votes. So I voted not to adjourn. And I think if we had not been in like a series of probably 3-4 different small group meetings, you probably would have seen the 20 vote as a block more. But look, whether we vote, at 8 p.m. or at noon tomorrow, like what I can tell you is right now, Kevin doesn't have the votes. And actually what I can tell you right now is he doesn't even have enough people negotiating with him to ultimately get them. Like he could maybe get another 10 votes if he just opened up the entire candy store and said, take what you want. Like, what color straight jacket do you want me to wear every day? And there are probably, double digits as well who would say, like, we don't care what the offer is, what the construct is. We don't trust him, and we're not going to be a part of elevating him.
I think you touched on this briefly just now, but some reporters, I think Politico especially, was reporting that some of the members of your group were excluded from other meetings, and you talked about this, saying that in fact he had little different breakout sessions, for a lack of a better term. Can you just clarify and
that report's not true, but it will force me in a moment to make a somewhat embarrassing admission. So people who were investigation hawks got to go to could choose to go to the investigation meetings. People who were budget hawks could choose to go to those meetings. I was asked to join Freedom Caucus Chairman Scott Perry in a meeting that included my dear friend and mentor, Mr. Jordan, and some others. And I got lost on the way there because my staff, who I dearly love, and who is represented on this space by Joel Valdez, my communications director, who you should all follow on Twitter, they demanded that we get an office this term in the Rayburn building, which is a hellscape for me. And so I got temporarily lost and was late. And then everybody's like, oh my God, Gaetz was late. Was he even invited? He went in the wrong door. And what I can tell you is that happens every day.
I think there's been some videos of newer members getting lost in that building.
Joel, back me up,
man. There's nowhere nice in Washington, D.C., ultimately.
That's right. Well, there is the Lincoln Waffle House, so I do disavow that point.
But you create like such an anxiety moment for people of like, you know, they're like going all crazy with all their conspiracy theories. They got him.
What can you say is the biggest thing that the public doesn't know about the speaker's race that you wish that they did know? And what is it? And you know, what should we know?
That you could tell us.
My biggest frustration probably is with the number one question I get, which is like, what's the plan? And there is in like conservative media Inc. this notion that like, oh, well, like if I can't exactly detail out every feature of how we're going to do better than Kevin McCarthy, then it's just impossible, right? But the reality is, you know, sometimes you have to achieve certain objectives to unlock a series of other options. So, you know, when people are like, well, who's it going to be? Well, look, there are candidates who can get to 18 who can't be candidates until we break Kevin's will. And so this is not a thing where you see the whole field at this exact moment. Right now, the principal objective is to demonstrate that Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes and will not be speaker. And once that sinks in and marinates throughout the conference, then we're going to have a compelling group of people who want this job. And I wish the country would just like have greater acceptance of just the sequence of events that's probably necessary to get to where we need to be.
So that's one of the things we watch the debates in between the votes, and sometimes they look heated, sometimes they seem very casual and almost congenial. How does I don't know how confrontational Congress actually is on a day-to-day basis, but this is definitely a more heated moment. What is the kind of like temperature in the room, and are there actually like very personal fights going on, or is this really kind of just people looking out for their best interest and what they think the country's best interests are?
Yeah, I would not play too much into that. I mean, like someone sent me some like clip of me and Mike Gallagher in what appeared to be like a very contentious spat, and there are few humans on the planet Earth I admire more than Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. And we were like not in any way a confrontation. We were sharing our unified views about how to make this place better. And I was joking that his speech was so good on the floor, I wanted to go nominate him right afterwards for speaker. And I would vote for Mike Gallagher. I'll tell you all that right now. He's a really sharp dude and a good dude, and someone who's definitely a rising star. When it comes to like the casual conversations, like the internet almost exploded because I had a talk with AOC, and it's like, oh, what could Gaetz and AOC possibly talk about? I'll let you in on it. I'll let you in on it right now. So, my wife was showing me some of the memes. Some of them were raunchy, but
heavens no.
Disavow.
We might have shared one or two of those earlier. Sorry about that.
Just right now.
You may actually be creating them.
No. But I will tell you, the actual substance did not in any way live up to the memes. One of the plays that McCarthy has floated to try to scare people into voting for him who don't believe in him is this notion that he could get like 5, 10, 20 Democrats to just walk on the vote and like disappear. And if that were to occur, then it would change the denominator in the equation that would determine how many votes someone needs. So you might be able to achieve the speakership at less than 218 votes. And that's what Nancy Pelosi ultimately did. So I was checking in with AOC and probably a dozen other Democrats to say, hey, look, are you guys going to bail? Are you guys going to get tired? Are you guys going to not be on the floor to cast your votes? Are you going to cut a deal with McCarthy so that he can get there with less than 218? And, when I have that conversation with David Cicilline or with Jared Moskowitz, every camera in Washington's not on. But when I have like the very same, normal conversation with AOC, it seemed to generate a lot of memes.
Well, I think it's probably because you're both, firebrands of your respective side, I guess, small f.
Well, she gave an interview on Alex Wagner's program last night where she very eloquently defended the goals of my movement in a lot of the rules changes that we are requesting. And it's because like where AOC and I are unified is that we don't want the Speaker of the House of either party to be able to disempower the membership. Because when the people whose names you don't know, but who hold substantial sway in this town and big committee gavels are able to make the decisions without us and roll us, well then, like, it's not a republic. It's an oligarchy. And so she did a really good job on the Alex Wagner program saying, look, what a lot of these Freedom Caucus folks want, and I'm not in the Freedom Caucus, but it reflects my viewpoint on the subject, is to have like bills that have a single subject, to be able to vote individually on legislation, to be able to offer amendments to bills that spend money. And these aren't crazy things. And we should be a sophisticated country that allows the board of directors of the most powerful nation on the planet Earth to actually be able to make decisions rather than to just serve as actors reading the lines that are written and directed by others.
So that was the last of the clips. I know Bricksuit, he spent a lot of time compiling these for us. Unfortunately, like I said, we didn't record the space, but thankfully Bricksuit did. So you should go and follow him. I'll put his Twitter handle down below. But what do you guys think about what is happening with the speaker, the Speaker of the House? Do you think Kevin McCarthy will prevail? Do you think Matt Gaetz and the other 19 or possibly 20 people, will they prevail? And what do you want to see? Who would you like to see as the Speaker of the House for the Republicans? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you are interested in that Twitter space that was last night, January 4th, well, we have another Twitter space going on right now, and Matt Gaetz will probably come in again tonight. This would be his third night, as well as maybe some other representatives in this battle. So make sure you go to my Twitter. I'm in the space. You can enter the space by looking at my Twitter. Well, thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoy this, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. Bye guys.